let's linger for a moment on one of the things you said there, which was don't really know where Jenrick stands economically, but we know where he stands socially. And if anyone watches his interviews or his content, they'll realize it's all around social issues. And when he's challenged by people who talk about him potentially straying past the bounds of political correctness, he's very good at handling those and saying, no, this isn't about color of people's skin when I'm talking about ending mass immigration. This is about being able to have a sense of shared history, shared stories, shared culture. And there's just been too fast. It's been too fast, too much. And people have their own stories and cultures that come over and they clash. Yeah. And let's stay with that for a second, because you've mentioned being Catholic in this podcast. We've spoken about it offline. There's a depth to that tradition and that faith, which I would say was understood and lived by, and not necessarily the Catholic worldview, for at least for 500 years in Britain. But do you think, when you look at the political class today, because this is the thing that stops me from ever really wanting to get involved, that it is so unbelievably shallow that there is basically nothing when you scratch the surface beneath our political class, that every question, whether every policy, is all about the cash nexus. It's the transactional relationship between humans, as though that's all there is. Everything that has gotten us into trouble has been quite literally following the GDP golden calf.
Yeah.
And there seems to be no sense of history, no sense of anything beyond that GDP. When you look at the quality of the speeches delivered by our politicians in Parliament, they are literally nothing, even on the people who sat there 30 years before. But then when you read the depth of the people who sat there 100 years before, you realise that by the late 20th century, there was almost no lights on. In the 21st century, they've all turned off. And I suppose the thing that really worries me about politics is that the past almost doesn't exist. There is no sense of anyone real having ever participated in building anything in this country. And we all seem to be living off the fumes of a civilization, whilst literally just headed off into a future that is so monodirectional and just keeps on leading us down the same problems. And I'm just wondering if it's a little bit like that Rudyard Kipling poem, The Gods of the Copybook Headings, which is we keep on coming up with all these worldly ideas of things that are going to make us happy. It's more pleasure. It's maximizing happiness. It's maximizing lifespan. It's all of these things. But we never actually think about the depth that makes a human life.
Yeah.
You're in politics now. What's your estimation of that?
I'd agree. I had a conversation with Lord Glassman and Maurice Glassman.
Blue Labour movement he's famous for.
Light Blue Labour. It's a good book. And the commodification of humanity effectively defines the last 40, 50 years of politics. And I do think that our current political class, they will say things that are a mile wide but an inch deep, right? And they'll say whatever they want, but there's no depth. There's no heritage. There's no linkage. Like, I mean, we go back to the Lib Dems, right? You see Ed Davey doing these stupid bloody stunts. That man is the heir to Gladstone, right? William Clouston said that. And like, I think of the liberals of the 18th and the 19th centuries, and I'm like, damn, how far they've fallen, I mean, even the Tories, right? Kemi's the inheritor of Disraeli, and there's just none of that, You look at some of the Tory greats of the 20th century as well, Churchill, you look at Eden, you look at Macmillan, even Thatcher to a bit of an extent. I mean, Thatcher, the thing with Thatcher is what she did has affected us massively, but I think she genuinely believed it. Like, she did at least believe in her principles and had a bit of that heritage, but after that, it was nonsense, and they've all just, and like Labour as well. I mean, like, you go for Attlee to Starmer, how far they've all fallen is what I can say to that. And that's why I like with the SDP is that because we've got the philosophy and the attachment to our heritage, and because we can see ourselves as the inheritors not only of the SDP of the 1980s, but also of the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, of the actual branches of those parties that have been snuffed out, and we can reconnect the political class with that, because that's what we stand for, is that connection to our heritage and our political history. Maybe it's egotistical of me to say that, but I would like to think that that's what we are. Yes, we're tiny at the moment, but I think with the potential and that philosophical heritage, we can really drive forward. And if we make a breakthrough, I think we'll gain quite quickly.
Well, all will be revealed in the fullness of time.
Yes.
Adam, before I let you go, the question that I ask all of my guests is, what have you changed your mind on during the course of your life that perhaps you once thought was an absolute never going to change, and yet it did? And what was it that made you think differently?
Ooh, that is a pretty... Obviously, I'm still quite young. So, when I was like breaking out into politics, I had a bit of an authoritarian streak. Everyone does. I was like, yeah, absolute monarchy, let's go. But these days, I'm much more mellow. I'm much more like, actually, democracy is a good thing. I think our constitutional monarchy is a real like benefit. I think having the ability to vote and put our voices down on the ballot paper is really important. And I think just the study of history and Catholicism brought me to that page. In fact, actually, yeah, like, as well, is that I used to fall into the green line go up good sort of economic thought, and now I'm much more like Leo the 13th, and hopefully our new Pope. With actually, yeah, the rights of people matter. Profit isn't everything. Just because we're making money doesn't mean progress is being made. And I would much rather have economic stagnation than and things be good than try desperately for progress and profit and things get bad. I think that's probably what I'd go with.
Interesting. Good answer. Probably linking the question and the answer back with the previous one is that we were talking about there being a lack of depth, and I know we went off on a bit of a economic bent, but also a tradition and history bent. But there's also a linking your point to of the Catholic Church and the dignity it affords individuals. This is something else about our political class, is that we've become so obsessed with efficiency, cost benefit, that now the way that we treat people, both at the end of their life and before their life on earth is even managed to be birthed, is we treat people like they are an obstruction to autonomy, like that only our freedom matters and not theirs, that only our lives matters and not theirs, whether unborn or dying. And that bit you talk about, how having been developing your worldview and your approach to your political life through the engaging with things much bigger and older than you and wiser than you, is something that you can see is lacking in our politicians. That it's like they've done their MBA or their surface level PPE course, but they've never lived anything or gone even deeper. And you see that in all of the policies that they make. They all go off in their herd-like thinking in certain directions. So that's a way of me bringing together whatever it is that happens to you, Adam, and the SDP. I hope there are more people in your mold who are actually seriously thinking about what it means to be human and the things that we need to flourish. Because if that gets into people's politics and their political calculations, that is infinitely better than just hearing about GDP and autonomy and all of the degradation that that's brought. I've clearly just put my whole worldview and political views on the table there.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that very much. I will say my closing sort of thoughts on that is that, I'm a historian as well by trade. So I've always been engaged with the past. And in order for politics to build the future, we have to engage with the past. We have to accept what happened in the past, link to it, use it to build our present, and then in that way preserve the future. Because if we don't, we make the same mistakes over and over again, and we risk worse happening. We are inheritors of a great tradition. We are inheritors of a country that has been built by the blood, sweat, and tears of thousands of years worth of people and different, we're talking, the ancient Britons, we're talking the Roman British, we're talking the Anglo-Saxons, we're talking the Normans, we're talking, the Georgian period, we're talking all of that. And we inherited all of that, and we're now squandering it. And that is an insult to not only the people who came before us, but also to the people who come after us. And that is something that we need to be aware of, is that it is not just all about me and my very limited perceived perception of the world, but it is about the people before me, the people currently here with me, and the people who are going to come after me. And if more people can realize that and take that, like you said, into politics, we suddenly will have policies and politicians dedicated to making this country a better place and a place for us all to enjoy living in.